goals. And I'm going to bring on Toby now to the stream. Toby.
Hey.
Long time no see, man.
Hey, I know it has been a very, very long time since about, I don't know, 2 a.m. Eastern time, I think.
Yeah. It's really funny. When we're planning that, I was saying to Fast, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I'm going to be exhausted. And he's like, Nick, are you absolutely kidding me? I mean, I hit my adrenaline. I was up. That was a wonderful time last night.
Awesome.
And I cannot express how generous it is of you to donate your winnings to the cause here. So really, thank you so much for that. But if you guys don't know Toby and BatFlip Crazy, well, Toby is the host of the BatFlip Crazy podcast. Toby is also the founder of BatFlipCrazy.com and a member of the FSWA. He also came in, I would say, 4th or 3rd in the semifinals of the Baseball Pods podcast tournament. Very well deserved. You can also find Toby's work on his YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/BatFlipCrazy, or on Twitter at BatFlipCrazy. Please welcome what I consider to be the founder of the Pocket Aces strategy, BatFlip Crazy. Welcome to PitchCon.
It's absolutely incredible to be here, Nick, and thank you for all that you guys are doing. I mean, having PitchCon right now with what's happening in baseball is just awesome. And then having an opportunity like last night to play poker with some of the folks in the industry, and it was a great time. And I really appreciate you, Alex, and the whole team setting it up.
Oh man, I mean, it's just you guys. Thank you so much for being a part of this. It doesn't work unless everyone in the industry is coming together to say, yes, of course, that sounds like a fun thing to do. So really, thank you so much for being a part of it. Yep. I'm excited for this presentation. Toby, if you want to share your screen, if you have a presentation, I can put it up onto the stream and I can let you get going.
Awesome.
So by the way, guys,
it should be good.
All right, cool. So remember, go to go.rallyup.com/pitcherlist to help out the cause. 50% of everything that we raise goes to Feeding America. Toby, take it away.
All right. Well, thanks again, Nick. I really appreciate it. And so the focus of my presentation is going to be, it's called Breaking Out, a process to identify unexpected fantasy contributors. And so really what I'm trying to do in this presentation is a lot of it is actually geared more towards FAAB and during the season, trying to identify those guys who may be having changes to their performance or underlying metrics. It may be that some of the underlying metrics have changed, but it hasn't shown up yet in their actual stats. And so what I'm going to do is use a couple examples from last year and guys who kind of broke out and what we might have been able to see in them breaking out that and the process that kind of I used in identifying some of them early on in the season. I want to give a huge shout out to Justin Paradis, whose logo, the GeoLitO logo I'm using over there in the bottom left or bottom right-hand corner, depending on where that is. It's an awesome logo. Justin does incredible work, and he allowed me to borrow it for this. And then the other guy is the guy on the other side, Hunter Dozier, who you're going to be seeing a lot of. So just an overview of the presentation. So I'm going to start out hopes and dreams. I thought goals was maybe a little bit too cheesy and too soccer oriented. So we're going to go with the hopes and dreams for the presentation. I'll share a little bit about what I'm just hoping that folks will learn from the presentation. I'll go over 4 tools, and these are tools that I use as part of my process and that I think might be helpful to fantasy owners out there. The presentation is going to be, I'm hoping that it'll be a practical presentation, a presentation where you can kind of see this and take some of it or all of it, whatever you want to, and be able to apply it in your leagues. The next piece is the process, which we'll go over. We all love process here in analytics. Some results. So some of the results from this process for myself, key considerations as you think about this process, and then obviously questions. And I'm hoping, hopefully there will be a lot of questions because, it'll be a lot of fun. So hopes and dreams. So I'm hoping that folks will learn about some helpful tools if you already don't know about them and what their application might be in actual fantasy baseball. Learning about the potentially helpful process and its possible applications. And then most importantly, of course, is to get excited and to win your league, because that's what we're all trying to do, right? So let's hop right in. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the tools. So some of these tools, you might be looking at them and you're like, I know about these tools already. And so some of this might be things that you already know, but FanGraphs leaderboards are an incredibly helpful tool. And I think the custom leaderboard feature, I'm not sure how many people know that it exists and how many people are using it, but I find that to be incredibly helpful in terms of creating efficiencies in being able to do this, right? Because we have limited amount of time and we want to create a process that is relatively quick and efficient that can help us improve. FanGraphs rolling average graphs. Anybody who follows me on Twitter, you know I love rolling average graphs. They're like my favorite thing in the world. And so I'm going to share a little bit about those and how you might be able to use those. Baseball Savant search. So this is the search functionality on Baseball Savant, which is really helpful because what I'm going to be talking about for a lot of the leaderboards, having me follow Derek Carty is great because he's focusing on, projection systems and a lot of things that I use like for draft season. And what this tool really, the best application I think is early on in the season and throughout the season to identify guys who may be making some changes. And so using kind of a shorter leaderboard than you would generally use at the Baseball Savant leaderboard page, and then Baseball Savant rolling average graphs. I will go over those as well. They're not as useful, I don't think, as FanGraphs ones, but I still have started to use those and incorporate them into my process. All right. So you all have probably seen this page right here, but I just wanted to show folks how to actually use them. So start out with the leaderboard over at FanGraphs. Click on whichever year you want, but 2019 here. And from there, you can see, some of the critical pieces to the leaderboards. You choose whichever one of these you want. I highlighted plate discipline, batted ball, and advanced because these are really the tabs for, at least for hitters, that I'm using a lot, and for pitchers in some respects. And so what I always found is like I would have to go across tabs, to see these different things. And so the great feature that FanGraphs has is they have the custom leaderboard. So if you scroll all the way down to the end of the leaderboard, you can actually create your own leaderboard using whichever metrics you want to, right? And so you can just focus in on those metrics that you find to be most useful. And for me, that's plate discipline, it's batted ball quality, and some of the things on the advanced tab. And so you can slide over all of those metrics that you see over there on the left, whichever ones you want to use. You can format it how you want with line breaks and not. You create that custom table, and then over on the right, you can save that, and then you'll have the saved report right down there below that. And so this is really helpful, just I think in terms of creating efficiencies. Instead of having to tab through a bunch of different leaderboards on FanGraphs, you can have all of the data that you want in one place. And so this is what my custom leaderboard from last year looked like for hitters. So you can see that I'm focused in on the last 14 days. This is a very small sample size, obviously. But for this, the sample size is less important because by the time a sample size is big enough for you to believe it, somebody else already has the player on their team. And we're talking about unexpected fantasy contributors here. So you can see some plate discipline metrics down there like O-swing, Z-contact, contact, hard hit rate, some batted ball metrics, hard hit rate, fly ball, ground ball, and then the actual stats. I don't focus on these as much, but I think it's helpful just to contextualize in terms of whether the skills that we're starting to see from people on the left-hand side or the right-hand side are matching up with the actual stats and the production. Because I think that's one of the areas where you can generate a lot of value from a fantasy baseball perspective is when guys are showing some sort of change, but it's not showing up yet in the metrics. So I think that's a really key piece. And so you can also create custom dashboards. So if you create an account on FanGraphs, you can actually create a custom dashboard within player pages as well, so that you don't have to roll up and down the page a bunch of times. You actually have all of that information that's right there at your fingertips. This is my own, and I have so many things that you have to scroll over all the way to the right. But it just allows me to save a lot of time by not having to go all the way down the page to find plate discipline or other metrics that I'm looking for. So rolling average graphs. Rolling average graphs are like my favorite tool. I just love rolling average graphs. Number one, because they're just beautiful, right? I mean, let's be honest with each other. Rolling average graphs are beautiful, but also because I just think they're helpful in contextualizing a player's performance against like their entire career or the last 3 seasons. And also just identifying some trends that might be happening with a player. So in order to get to rolling average graphs, again, a lot of you might already use these, but just to make sure that folks know how to find them, you just go to the graphs tab within a player page on FanGraphs, click over on the batting right there. And then you're going to be right here. And you can see Hunter Dozier for the first time. You guys are going to get used to seeing his name because I'm going to use him as an example. A lot of people would accuse me of confirmation bias in using 2 guys that were successful last year in breaking out. And I would absolutely agree with you. But this is my presentation, so I get to use confirmation bias. So Hunter Dozier right here, I'm highlighting at the top in that circle is just all the different metrics, the grouping of metrics that you can choose to graph out. And then I always use the by game to order them. And so this might be what you would see right here for Hunter Dozier for his 40-game rolling average. And so the games that you choose, like it can fluctuate. You can use shorter ones, longer ones. 40 games seems to me like it's a quarter of a season. There's a number of different metrics that stabilize at that point. If you reference Derek Carty's presentation from earlier, he was talking about ground ball rates at, I think, like 37 games or something like that. And so this just gives me a sense of, you know, over the last quarter season, how is the player's performance compared to what it has been previously? And so with Hunter Dozier right here, you can kind of see some of the improvements that we have in contact rate, some of the improvements in hard hit rate recently as well, some of the lowering of the ground ball rate, and the O swing is cut off, but some slight improvements there as well. And I'll dig a little bit deeper. And that just gives you a sense of what you want to do. I really focus on the plate discipline and the batted ball metrics when I'm looking at hitters. I'll sometimes go over to the advanced column because it's got strikeout percentage, it's got walk percentage, and I definitely use those as well. But really, like by looking at the skills, what we're trying to do is maybe identify some things that might not be showing up yet in the actual data that people generally look at, you know, like the stats or the K percentage, right? If somebody's contact rate has improved dramatically, but their K percentage has stayed the same, we may want to figure out exactly why there's a difference, because that might be an opportunity to identify somebody who maybe do some positive regression when it comes to his strikeout rate. So next up is for pitchers. You go to the same thing, the graphs tab right there. You have both the pitching and you have the pitch velocity. If you really quickly just want to see if a pitcher's velocity has changed, you just click right there on the pitch velocity, and it'll show you kind of the dots, if you've ever seen the dots of the velocity and the range that the pitcher has had in their various last performances. Generally, I'm looking over at the pitching one. And I think rolling average graphs are probably more helpful for pitchers, just because I think there's a lot of different changes that you can see that are much more clear than you can see for hitters. You know, things like pitch mix, things like velocity, things of that nature. And so again, I use a lot more metrics when it comes to pitchers, depending. So like initially I'll start off with plate discipline because I want to see like what the underlying skills like swinging strike rate, O swing, things like that. How are those changing? And then if they are changing, then I might want to look at pitch type to see how there's been a change in his pitch mix or, you know, his velocity. The advanced, I want to look at maybe K percentage, walk percentage, the batted ball. I don't really pay a ton of attention to batted ball metrics for pitchers. I just think that there's not a lot of predictiveness to them. And so I don't focus a ton on them. I'll look at like ground ball rates in particular. And that's one thing about that you'll notice as I go through this is that I don't look at fly ball rates and line drive rates much. I look at ground ball rates mostly because they do stabilize a little bit quicker. And line drive rates have a lot of variance year to year. Generally speaking, there are some players that don't, but generally speaking, they have a lot more variance than any other grouping. And so ground ball rate just lets me know like how often somebody's hitting the ball in the air. All right, and so here you can see at least only the top of Lucas Giolito's 10 games. For starting pitchers, you know, I might, it depends really on like what I'm trying to do. Like in the off season, I'll look at like 10 to 15 game rolling averages. During the season, I'm oftentimes looking at 5 game rolling averages deeper in the season. But if it's early in the season, I'll look at, you know, even like 1 and 2 game rolling averages just to see how, you know, pitch mix might be changing, things like that. Again, obviously the shorter the period of time and the number of games that you're looking at, the shorter the amount or the more variance you're going to have. So the more noise, if you will. And then again, at the top, you'll see I'm circled pitch type, plate discipline, and advanced. Those are kind of the metric groupings that I tend to use the most. All right, Baseball Savant. So here is the search functionality for Baseball Savant. It's right over here. A lot of us use the leaderboards. The search functionality is a little wonky, to say the least. I know that the folks over at PitcherList, like Alex, are super familiar with these, and there's some great tutorials that have been done on how to use these. But generally speaking, the reason why I'm using this is because it allows me right there in the middle, that game date, I can choose the window of game date that I want to look at. So I can look at the last 14 days. I can look at the last 7 days. I can look at the last month. And I'm not just limited to the leaderboard, which is a full season worth of metrics. And then you can see some of the categories that I generally look at, right? You want to change batter or pitcher. You want to make sure you got the right season. The sort by has a variety of different options. And then you always want to use, you know, if you use no filter at all from plate appearances, you're going to get guys who had like, you know, a lot of pitchers who had 1 hit and their ex-WOBA on that 1 hit was incredible, but they're gonna really clutter it up. So you want to get like a decent amount of sample size right there with the plate appearance. 20 is small, but we're looking at about 2 weeks of data right there. And then you'll see this is what will pop out. So you have Hunter Dozier right there. You'll see this again. You know, and so as of April 13th last year, Hunter Dozier was 35th among players with 20 plate appearances in terms of expected WOBA. And then here's what the pitchers are. So I've done the search right here for CSW. It's in the top left corner there. So under the pitch result, but again, toggling between pitcher and batter, choosing the season, choosing the game date so that you have that correct range. And then also with pitchers, like they don't have total batters faced. And so I often find myself using minimum number of total pitches. There are probably people out there who know these leaderboards a lot better than me, might know some better ways to filter, but that's what I use, the pitches. And then you can sort by like pitch percentage if you're doing CSW. You can also do a lot of the batted ball metrics here as well. Then you can see Lucas Giolito right there with a 31.4% CSW after his first 3 starts this season. All right, and then both Baseball Savant rolling average graphs. I feel like these are less known. But essentially what you do up there, you just search for the player. So they're on each player page. And by the way, how much do you love the new StatCast little boxes there with the bars? Those are the most amazing thing. But right there at the bottom, you can see the breakdowns. That's what you're going to want to click on. You're going to want to click on the breakdowns, and this is what you're going to see. And so right there, you have the Hunter Dozier's rolling average exit velocity over his last 100 batted balls. Average exit velocity. You can scroll through. There's not a ton of metrics you can look at, which is why I don't use it a ton. I use average exit velocity. I'll use hard hit rate, things like that. But they don't have barrel rate, for instance, which I think would be super useful. And then you can change the minimum number of batted balls in play. Like that's the rolling average graph for 100 balls in play as opposed to 50, which is another option that you can choose. And again, here's for pitchers. Again, here's Lucas Giolito's right here. Look at all that red. It's beautiful. The breakdowns, and then you have it right here again. I don't really use rolling average graphs for pitchers, but again, I just wanted to show folks how you might be able to get those and how you might be able to use them. And so this is my little reference that I have here to The Good Life, because some of you are probably thinking, man, Toby, you basic. Because I just gave you probably some tools that a lot of you guys have already used. But I just wanted to make sure that people are familiar with them, you know how to use them, you know where exactly they are, because those are really a critical part of the process. Now, this is my favorite slide of the presentation because I just think it's beautiful. I mean, I don't want to pat myself on the back here, but this process thing, you know, using smart art in PowerPoint, I feel like is incredibly challenging. So anytime you can create smart art that makes at least like a modicum of sense, I feel pretty good about it. So here's the process right here that I'm going to outline. It starts with FanGraphs tools and using that as kind of a broad filter. And then it digs into Baseball Savant tools, some additional filters you can use, and then the application of those. And then theoretically, you use this process and then you're winning. You're at the top of that pedestal right now with your arms raised, with your competitors below you, and you have won. You are number one. And so right here, we have FanGraphs custom leaderboards. So this is essentially how I use those custom leaderboards. So I showed you the tool, how you can create your own. This is how I use it. And this is kind of the initial filter that I use. So I'm on here every single day. I'm looking at, generally speaking, short-term leaderboard. So 14 days is my favorite. That I think is kind of the sweet spot. I'll sometimes look at 7 days as well. And a month is kind of helpful sometimes, but a lot of times, again, like, you know, if you're in the middle of a season and there's a guy who's had a good week, chances are in your league, especially in deeper leagues, that guy is going to be gone in the next waiver wire. So really what you're trying to do is identify those guys who may be displaying improved skills or good skills in a variety of different important metrics that might suggest that they could be better, right? Like it's not going to be predictive by this point in time in a season, right? We don't have that sample size, but we don't have that luxury in today's game. We need to be making decisions with incomplete information, but we want to give ourselves the best incomplete information that we possibly can. And so again, I like 14 days because it's not super small, but also again, a month, like if a guy's showing good skills over the period of a month, chances are that other people have probably noticed. Not that really anybody doesn't notice anything anymore. There's so many sharp people out there right now. So the key hitter metrics that I focus in on my FanGraphs customs leaderboard and just on FanGraphs in general, if you don't create a custom leaderboard, is what I like to call the four legs of this stool. I guess it would be the four legs of the hitting stool. And I really wanted to incorporate an awesome stool icon in there on the right, but alas, that was not available in PowerPoint. And I also forgot to give myself a pat on the back for those icons earlier in the presentation, like the batter and the thought bubble with the batter in there. I mean, these PowerPoint skills are phenomenal. You might be seeing a breakout of PowerPoint presentation skills right this second. All right. So key hitter metrics, four legs of the stool. So O swing, you know, this is how frequently a batter swings at a pitch outside the zone. So it's a great proxy for like walk percentage or plate discipline. And again, like what I want to do is maybe a guy's O swing has improved dramatically, but for some reason his walk rate hasn't. And so I might want to investigate why exactly that might be. And so again, plate discipline is important because people swinging at pitches outside the zone, there's very few hitters that can make good contact with pitches outside the zone. Contact and Z contact. So contact overall, it correlates very strongly with strikeout rate, just like O swing does with walk rate. And so contact rate overall is great to look at. I also look at Z contact. That one's really important for me because I really want to know how frequently that a guy swings at a pitch inside the zone, that he's making contact with it, because I really want that Z contact to be solid. I want it to be good. I don't actually want, theoretically, that O swing, that O contact to be that high. I mean, I'd rather have it high than low, but if a guy is making a ton of contact on pitches outside the zone, chances are that they're not making quality contact. And then part one of what I would call two parts of FanGraphs' quality of contact for me is ground ball percentage. I mentioned this earlier. I don't look at fly ball percentage or line drive percentage as much as I do for ground ball percentage. Again, it stabilizes fairly quickly. And I also, like, line drive rate has a lot of variance. And really what I want to know is how frequently is a guy hitting the ball in the air. That's what I want to know. And ground ball tells me that, because a low ground ball rate means the guy is hitting the ball in the air a lot. And then the next one is hard hit rate. So that's part two of the FanGraphs quality of contact right there. And so I look at hard hit rate. Again, it's part of the quality of contact metric, but really, like, that I think is where StatCast data comes in and is super helpful is, and I would call it part 3 of quality of contact, is really is the StatCast data and looking at barrels and things like that, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. But again, it's on a different website. So those are kind of the 4 legs of the stool for me: O-swing, contact, ground ball rate, and hard hit percentage. And so let's take a look. So this is as of April 13th, 2019. Here is your FanGraphs custom leaderboard that I had for Hunter Dozier. And essentially what I'm doing when I'm looking at this leaderboard, I go to the leaderboard and I scroll through each of the metrics that I've identified. And I'm looking for, and so I'll look at like guys who have low O swings. And I'll essentially scroll all the way through until I've reached about league average, because I want to see guys who are better than league average, right? And so in this particular metric, like what you'll see is, oh man, Hunter Dozier is way the hell up there in zone contact rate. Like, that's surprising. I don't necessarily think of Hunter Dozier as having a really high contact rate. Okay. So then you want to look at the other metrics, the other legs of the stool. Then I look over at his O swing and I'm like, hot damn, Hunter Dozier has an O swing of 22.8%. League average is around 30.5%. So he's 8% better than league average. He's doing a really good job of swinging at pitches inside the zone and having good plate discipline. And look at that. He's also got really good contact skills, both in zone and overall in his contact. And then I look at his hard hit rate. Lo and behold, he's got a higher hard hit rate than the league average as well. It's pretty good. It's not necessarily elite, but it's very good. Last year's average hard hit rate was like 38.5%. So his hard hit rate at 41.7%, we're talking about 3% better than league average. That is absolutely fantastic. Then I look over at his ground ball rate and it's 30.6%. League average is about 42%. Holy crap. Hunter Dozier has checked off every single box that I want to see from the FanGraphs Customs leaderboard in terms of what, like, that's what I want to see a guy doing. His walk rate is solid, but not necessarily as good as you would expect from the O swing that he has right there. His K rate is also very good. But look at that. He's only hitting 256 with a 327 OBP. 5 runs. The 3 home runs is actually pretty good for this point in the season, and 6 RBI. All right, we're about 14 games or something like that into the season by this point. All right, so let's take a look at his rolling average graph. So I've gone into his rolling average graph, and there I see, the improvements in contact rate actually predate this year, right? He actually started to improve his contact rate late last season. And so then I look over at his contact rate, same thing. That's not necessarily surprising given what you might anticipate. And then I look over and it's like, oh, look, his hard hit rate was also a little elevated towards the end of last year. It's higher than his 3-year rolling average, although that's skewed because it incorporates the end of this year. And then I also look at his, but if you look at like before then, it's much better than it was before. And then I look at his ground ball rate and it's like, oh, lo and behold, his ground ball rate has also gone down significantly towards the end of last year and also early this year. And then I take a look at his plate discipline and holy moly, it's cratering right there. So what I'm seeing is everything that I would like, right? I don't know whether these are going to continue or not. You can see that there's variance throughout it. But what I can tell you is that the trend lines for Hunter Dozier in the last 40 games are incredibly good. Like, you couldn't really ask for anything better than that. But he's sitting there on the waiver wire in the vast majority of leagues, right? His ADP last year was 526 in NFBC drafts. All right, okay, so that's Hunter Dozier. Okay, great, that looks great. So FanGraphs Customs leaderboards for pitchers. Again, 14 days, 7 days, a month. 14 days, you're hoping you get 3 starts out of that. 7 days, maybe 1 or 2. A month, again, you may want to look at a little bit longer for pitchers. But the key metrics that I'm going to look at is the holy grail of pitcher stats, which is K minus walk rate. It's right there. You can see it right there. Swinging strike rate. I want to know if the guy is generating swings and misses. So that's essentially swings and misses divided by pitches. I also look at Z contact. I want to know, can the guy dominate in the zone? Can he be effective throwing the ball in the zone and still getting swings and misses? If you look at the Z contact leaderboard every single year, just like the swinging strike rate leaderboard, all the best pitchers are right there. And that's a good indicator that that's good. And then I want to look at the combination of O swing, first pitch strike rate, and then zone percentage to give a sense of control, right? O swing, you want that to be higher. You want the guy to induce pitches, swings on pitches outside the zone. First pitch strike rate is also correlated with walk rate. You want that to be on the higher end because you want the guy to start out with a strike. We know that generally at bats end better when that happens. And then zone percentage, how frequently is the guy throwing the ball in the zone? And this is super helpful in small sample sizes because it gives you a sense of like whether the walk rate that somebody is displaying actually aligns with maybe what the underlying skills would suggest. And so I look at these, and if a guy is above league average in all three of these, then theoretically they should be better than league average in terms of their walk rate. And then I'll look at pitch specific metrics. So I'll dive into pitch splits, and I'll show you. Well, maybe I won't. Maybe I won't show you how to get that, but it's right off of the splits tab on FanGraphs, and then I'll also look at changes in velocity potentially. So let's take a look at Lucas Giolito. Again, thanks to Justin for that amazing logo right there for Lucas Giolito. So looking at Giolito, the O swings pretty awful, obviously. But the Z contact is better than league average, right? I'm looking for better than league average. And the swinging strike rate, it's 42nd best among qualified starting pitchers, but it's still 11%. So it's slightly better than league average. And then his zone percentage is at 50%, which is way above league average. And then his first pitch strike rate is a little bit lower than league average. So it's mediocre. So you're kind of like, his walk rate isn't necessarily that great, but he is showing some skills. I want to see what's happening. Oh, okay. So towards the end of last season, we saw that dip in Z contact. I'm doing a 3-game rolling average because that's the number of games he had pitched so far that season. If you see me looking over to the left, I'm just checking my time right here because I only got one monitor, unfortunately. So I'm like just staring at this blank screen, or not blank screen, but I'm staring at my PowerPoint presentation like I'm giving it. And so it's 11:31, just for all of you that are wondering. And so the Z contact has dipped right there, and you can see, it's right around what his 3-year average is, but that would have been much higher because it also incorporates that 2019 where you see his absolutely incredible in-zone contact rate. But you can see the improvement right there in the first pitch strike rate. You can see the improvement there in his zone percentage, right? And one of the knocks on Giolito going into this was that the walk rate was astronomical. And then you can also see some slight improvement towards the end of last year. Pretty stable. I put that line right there of where that 3-game rolling average is, where we are exactly in the kind of process in terms of April 13th. And you can see it's slightly better than league average, but better at like kind of a high point for his career almost at that point in time. And so that's like, oh, wow. So that's interesting. So there are some improvements that are happening. Okay, let's dive in a little deeper. Holy crap. Look at this. Lucas Giolito has stopped throwing his sinker. He was throwing his sinker 35% of the time towards the end of last year, and it's at 0% through 3 games of this season. His four-seam fastball his usage has gone way up. That is super interesting. And look at that fastball velocity. It's about half a mile per hour higher. Well, at the time, it would have been more than a half a mile per hour higher than his career average. And so we see that there's also a velocity increase. And if we know anything, the things that a pitcher can really do to make dramatic changes are increase velocity and have a pitch mix change or add an additional pitch. And so Lucas Giolito at this time had a 12.5% walk rate. Now I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so his zone percentage is pretty high. His first pitch strike rate is fine. His O swing is not that great, but the zone percentage is strong. So that seems a little shaky for having a 12.5% walk rate. That doesn't seem like it's a legit 12.5% walk rate. I don't think that lines up with the skills that he's necessarily showing. And I'll show you how you can use Baseball Savant to identify how that is, that was true. And then I look at his pitch splits, and then I'm like, oh man, look at this. Lucas Giolito last year had 2 not terrific pitches, but 2 above league average, or like right around league average breaking pitches. 16.7% swinging strike rate on that changeup, 15.9% on that slider. Man, okay, so that's something to definitely work with. That fastball is terrible, but we know that the velocity on that four-seam fastball is up about a mile per hour over last year. So that might improve everything across the board. And what you could see, and I can't go back and show it to you now, but His changeup, you see down there how it's 22% swinging, 0.2% swinging strike rate for 2019. It was at a similar place 3 games into the season last year, as was his slider. It was in a really good place last year as well. So hot damn, like that is something I can definitely work with. All right, so now let's use Baseball Savant. So we've kind of used that filter. And if you go back and look through those lists, there's other guys who ended up being breakouts last year who show up in that list. A lot of them were drafted, but maybe further back in ADP. But there's also some just like surprising guys who showed up. But we're just going to go through this example using Lucas Giolito and Hunter Dozier because I believe very firmly in confirmation bias when it benefits me. So Baseball Savant, search for hitters. So 14 days, 7 days, a month. Again, I won't go over why we do that again. But the key hitter metrics that I'm going to look at for those times is expected WOBA, expected slugging. Expected WOBA incorporates walk percentage. So it may or may not be as useful if you're not using OBP like in your fantasy league. Definitely want to look at barrels. We love barrels. We know that it also stabilizes pretty quickly from Derek's presentation earlier. Average exit velocity, including in key launch angle buckets, right? Average exit velocity is great, but especially great on line drives and fly ball. It's also most predictive on line drives and fly balls. So like sometimes I'll do just for a quick search is like above 0 degree launch angle, how many batted balls above 100 miles per hour does a guy have? You can do searches like that just to identify guys that are making quality of contact. Again, a key part of that 4-legged stool. Then I'll look at hard hit rate as defined by Baseball Savant, 95 miles per hour or plus, or I'll do a search for 100 miles per hour plus. And then I'll look at max exit velocity. Just look at the guy's max exit velocity over the last couple years, because max exit velocity is super helpful in just telling us like how hard a guy can hit. Like we know Billy Hamilton's max exit velocity is going to be lower than Joey Gallo's, right? But there's actually some surprising guys. Like Ketel Marte is a really good example of a guy who has an incredibly high max exit velocity that looking at him, you would never expect that to be the case. And so look at this. The expected WOBA for Hunter Dozier is 410. Now, what you don't see is that his WOBA so far through the season was at 367. So he was actually underperforming what he should have been doing. Okay, great. So he's doing well on expected WOBA. Look at his barrels. He's 60th, but he's got 5 barrels. At this point in the season, he had 49 plate appearances. And so he had a barrel per plate appearance above 10%. That's really good. Now look at this list. Max Kepler, breakout last year. Jorge Soler, breakout last year. Yohan Moncada, kind of a breakout last year, right? Some of these guys, again, were drafted, but in shallower leagues, they may have been on your wire, but this was potentially an indicator that they were going to be successful. JD Davis is right there. Brandon Lau is right there. You know, there's guys that are super interesting. Exit velocity, 93.6. He's 30th in the league in average exit velocity. Holy moly. Hunter Dozier seems like he's doing everything that he could possibly do to be a successful fantasy contributor, but he's sitting on the waiver wire in a variety of different leagues. In fact, I had drafted him in a bunch of different leagues, but I had 3 key leagues, TGFBI and 2 main events last year. And I had drafted Hunter Dozier in all of them except for 1. And he was dropped in that league after his first, I think the first week or the second week or something like that. And I picked him up. But here you go, 93.6 miles per hour. All right, now let's see his rolling average graph. I'm not that into the rolling average graphs on exit for Baseball Savant, but there you go. Oh, look, an improvement towards the end of last year, just like his hard hit rate, just like everything we see. So this probably predates the beginning of this season. Like we've got maybe a little bit of a bigger sample that says he can be a contributor. All right, here we go. This is a tweet that I put out on April 8th. Pick up Hunter Dozier in deeper leagues before it's too late, because he checks off every single box that I could possibly want him to check off, right? Like this is exactly what I want to see from a hitter. It just so happens we don't think Hunter Dozier is very good. And, but this is what we want to see. And so go ahead, pick him up. And here's a little secret. This was in the preseason in January 11th, 2019. So this is how you might be able to use it for drafting, right? Is there were some things that he wasn't doing great, like his O swing, but there were things that Hunter Dozier was doing well, and he had access to playing time. And so that's one of the reasons why he was part of my bold predictions last year. Baseball Savant pitchers. got like 10 minutes, I think, before we got to do Q&A, guys. We're gonna keep going. So Baseball Savant search for pitchers, short-term leaderboard, 14 days, 7 days, month. The key pitcher metrics, there's not a ton actually on Baseball Savant that I look at. CSW, shout out to Pitchers List for creating that. It's one of my holy grails of pitching stats as well. And then ball percentage is another one that I want to look at, especially over small sample sizes. Because if you'll remember, Lucas Giolito had a really high walk rate at this point in the season. Here we see his CSW is 31.4%. We know that league average is about 28.5%. So that's really good. Look at some other guys who broke out last year. Brandon Woodruff, Matt Shoemaker before he got injured, right? So there's other guys, and obviously like there's guys like Corbin Burns who maybe was good for a little bit and then was really, really bad. Lucas Giolito, so right there, he checks the CSW box. All right, so not everything's perfect with Giolito like it is with Dozier. Let's see his ball percentage, 36.2%. That's interesting because the league average is 36.6%. So this is a guy who's got a walk rate that's over 4% above league average. And yet he's throwing balls at about the same percent as the league average. So I would anticipate that his walk rate would actually be closer to like 8% or something like that. And especially over a small sample size, this is super helpful because this is on a per pitch basis, whereas walk percentage is on a per batter faced. And so like, let's say Giolito throws 4 balls to 3 batters, but all 4 of those balls are to 1 batter, then his walk rate is 33%, right? So over small sample sizes, there's a ton of noise, and you want to be able to identify that. And so here's Lucas Giolito. Now, what's funny about this tweet is I'm kind of wrong. It says Lucas Giolito has stopped throwing his sinker this year and is only throwing his 4-seamer. That's great because we know that his sinker had the lowest swinging strike rate of any pitch. His K metrics are all up, which is really good. The bad news is his fastball, his 4-seam is horrible. Well, it was horrible, but last year he added a 1.5 miles per hour of velocity. And guess what? It ended up having an 11% swinging strike rate. It was an elite 4-seam fastball from a swing and miss perspective. So it actually ended up being really good. And then he's throwing, so maybe the solution is throwing his 4-seam less and his changer and slider more. No, it was just having a really good 4-seamer. And so then you'll see kind of the application of this. This is my FAAB period from April 13th, Sunday, April 13th. So you'll see I went a little hard on him, but Hunter Dozier, went hard on him. Lucas Giolito went hard on him, in a variety of different leagues. I also went hard on Daniel Vogelbach. Don't look at that one. Okay, please don't look at that one. Additional filters and tools. So again, like you'll see, this is how you might be able to apply this is by using that. So additional filters and tools. What we want to do is look at upcoming schedule. So again, if this is a FAAB tool, and really like what you're not expecting from the waiver wire to get a guy who's going to contribute to you for a full season, right? Not every guy's a Hunter Dozier. Not every guy's a Lucas Giolito. I just used it to make my presentation look better, right? But like so you got to understand what your goals are, right? And so a lot of times I love the grind in fantasy baseball. And that's really just like getting all of this data as much as you can, get it together and figure out who the best guy for the next week, the next 2 weeks, the next 3 weeks, the next month is, right? If you're in a daily league, who's the dude who's the best for the next game, right? That's how you're going to be able to squeeze out the maximum amount of value in your fantasy baseball league. And so check out the good matchups, right? For hitters or pitchers. Like, yeah, you're the guy who, is the second to last guy on your bench or, your worst hitter that starts in your starting lineups. He may be really good, but is he better than, the best guy, the guy who has the best matchup, who's sitting on the waiver wire? Is he? Probably not, because to be honest with you, there's very little difference after a certain point in the actual quality of the player. And so that's just one thing to always be thinking about. Good matchups. Look a week ahead. Look 2 weeks ahead, right? Look for those starting pitchers who are going to have those good weeks. Look for the number of games a week, right? If guys have fairly similar skills and fairly similar schedules, one guy has 7 games in 1 week and one guy has 5, get that guy who has 7 games in a week. You could also look at splits, like if a guy's in a platoon, how many games a week is he going to play? Take a look at luck metrics, right? So strand rate, that's one thing. Lucas Giolito at this point in the season, his ERA was 6.19. His WHIP was 1.5. But looking at his strand rate, it was 65%, which is way below what it will end up being on the season. His BABIP was also super high, and traditionally he hasn't been a high BABIP guy because he gets a lot of fly balls. Is there a differential between his WOBA and his expected WOBA? Is his home run per fly ball rate totally out of whack and not close to league average? Those are the types of things that you can look at to get there, right? So try to identify that. So Lucas Giolito, if you had looked at his ERA at 6.19, his WHIP of 1.5, the fact he's getting absolutely destroyed, you might not have taken a second look. But if you look at those underlying skills and you see that there might be a reason why he could get better, that might be an unexpected fantasy contributor, right? Same thing with Hunter Dozier. His expected WOBA versus WOBA, there was a big differential there, right? I think it was like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but like the 85th biggest differential at that point in time or something like that. But he was much better. He had been doing much better than he could have been doing. And that doesn't mean he's going to do better in the future. But if he's checking all those boxes, then that's super helpful. Some other tools I didn't talk about, but are also part of my process. So Brooks Baseball, so velocity readings. I trust Brooks Baseball the most on the velocity readings. And then also they provide pitch-specific whiff rate rolling average graphs, which is super helpful. And then Alex Chamberlain's pitch leaderboard. If you haven't bought into that yet, you definitely should. It's got enough. It takes StatCast data to the next level, and it provides some really cool metrics. Go back and look at Alex's presentation from PitchCon. It was great. He had some awesome stuff that he shared. It even has like, you can do rolling average graphs by pitch for expected WOBA and things like that. Like, it's just, there's so many different cool features there. So I just wanted to plug that. Definitely use that. He also has a hitter one that's also phenomenal as well. So the applications of this, it's mostly FAAB, right? So like during a season, I think this is a really great way to improve your FAAB, or it's at least been helpful to me. And again, we're trying to make it easy instead of like going all over the place, like, and looking at a variety of different things, having that process that you know how to do and you can go really quickly. You might be able to hear my kids screaming in the background. I apologize for that. It happens. So mostly FAAB, but trades too, right? If you see that a guy in your dynasty league has Hunter Dozier, and I'm kicking myself actually. So, I always think about this. So like in your dynasty league, if you see what Hunter Dozier's doing and you know he's not valued a lot, make a trade. See if the other guy has noticed. Do the same thing for Lucas Giolito. I proposed a trade for Lucas Giolito in one of my dynasty leagues, and the guy didn't accept it. And I could have gone a little bit more to get it done, and I didn't. And then he blew up. And I will live with that. It's brutal. Anyways, and then draft, right? And you want to use larger sample sizes. I use projections, right? So Derek Carty's the bat, Ariel Cohen's ATC, Steamer, Zips, whatever it is. I use projection systems mainly for the draft, but you definitely want to use some of these tools to be able to identify changes that may have been made that may not have been picked up as quickly as from projections, especially pitcher changes, because again, increases in velocity and pitches to changes the pitch mix may not be, people may not get those, or the projection systems don't integrate those quickly enough, right? Like Lucas Giolito going from 33% on his sinker to 0% on his sinker is an absolutely massive change that a projection system is going to miss. And you can see that with the projection systems and the way they're valuing Lucas Giolito right now. They don't necessarily buy it. Last year, he was also 2018, he was also the worst pitcher in baseball. So that might be another reason why. So key considerations. Again, you have the overall player pool, your FAAB pool, your draft pool, whatever it is. Implement your process. That's the initial filter, right? And then you generate your targets. The number of boxes checked. So the number of things for hitters on that stool that they check off. The number of, like, some guys might have made great progress in hard hit rate and ground ball rate, but not necessarily in the other areas, right? They're not all Hunter Doziers. That indicates what your strength of conviction is, and it informs your FAAB price. Like, how badly do you want it? Like, how badly do you want this guy? And that's why my FAAB prices were way too high on those guys, is because I looked at them and I said, I want these guys and I want to make sure that I get them, right? And in some instances, it's definitely backfired. Like you saw Daniel Vogelbach right there. But again, like, that is informing how strong of a conviction you have. How much has changed? How well have they changed? Those things. Don't worry about small sample sizes, right? If you're in the season, you don't have the luxury of waiting until the sample size is big enough to know for sure whether it's predictive or not. You need to make decisions with incomplete information on the best information that you possibly have. And you're going to miss a lot more than you hit, right? I've shared with you the confirmation bias of these guys because they did well, right? If I had shared Daniel Vogelbach, if I had shared some of the ones I'm going to share with you in a second, just to make fun of myself, like, you wouldn't have believed me. You wouldn't want to implement this process. But I tell you, like, the key is you're dealing with a player pool, especially in FAAB, that isn't that great. And so you're going to miss a ton. But if you can hit on one or two of these guys who can be game changers, that can make all the difference in your season. And remember your goals. Is your goal to get the guy who's going to be the best player in the next game? Is it to be the guy who's going to be the best player in the next week, the next month, the next season? Start with the game. If he's good for a game, great. If he's good for that week, great. If he's good for that month, great. Maybe it'll be the full season. But just remember what your goals are. You're not going to find with every single time, you pick up a guy that you're confident in, like, more often than not, you're going to fail. And so just know what your goals are. So some results, part one, you can see the Lucas Giolito tweet. The Hunter Dozier tweet. This is from 2018, just to show you that this can work in other seasons. This is from Max Muncy right here. I believe when this tweet was put out, he had like 3 home runs. And from this point forward, he had 31 home runs or something like that. I don't have the notes. It was in my notes, but I can't see my notes in my presentation right now. And so you can see that works. But then some other results, right? Jake Bowers. Everybody knows I was big on Jake Bowers last year. I want to apologize for everybody who believed me there, right? That was not a good pick. Matt Harvey was a bold prediction of mine, just like Hunter Dozier was a bold prediction of mine. That did not work out, right? There was reason to believe it might, but it didn't. Tyler White also looked like he might be really good last year. Guess what? He wasn't. I mean, he checked off like pretty much every single box during that short window of time, but it didn't work out because there's many more tweets that look like this than the Lucas Giolitos and the Hunter Doziers, but those were just good examples to use. So thank yous to Pitcher List just for putting on this event, for being an incredible organization. I just think it's phenomenal to be able to look out and see the work that you guys are doing on a consistent basis, like over and over and over. You guys are just putting out great content, furthering the game. Nick and Alex, for your guys' leadership as Pitcher List and just in the industry in general. Again, Justin Paradis. I hope I'm saying that right, Justin. I asked for pronunciation before this. At Fresh Meat Com. He does a lot of the visuals for Pitcher List, which are just absolutely incredible. He did the Giolito graphic. Thank you for letting me do that. And then again, to the viewers, listeners, fantasy baseball community, that's just absolutely fantastic and incredible. Can never say enough and appreciate you guys enough for what you're doing. I hope you enjoyed this. And questions, and I think at this point I stopped sharing.
Oh, that was so awesome, Toby. Well done, man. That was great. I don't know.
Right. I can see you now, Nick.
Okay, good.
I can see you.
Good. And I'm happy you also, I remember at one point you were like, hey, I have so much to do left. I don't know if I have the time for it. Nah, man, I'm happy that you kept going. That was great. We do have some time for questions. And I have one. Well, I guess, did you know that I had a bet with the Welsh about Matt Harvey this year or last year?
I didn't. I knew there were some people who were in on him. But were you on? Which side were you on?
All I wanted to do was showcase that Matt Harvey wasn't as bad as people were making him out to be. That's it. Like, there was a chance that he was going to be okay. And so I bet that Matt Harvey would have a better season than Marcus Stroman. And that was
hey, I said he would be a top 40 starting pitcher. So
okay. All right. But yeah, so at least we're both past that one now.
Yeah.
All right. So we have some quick questions here. Pull Hitter 43 says, do you draft some churn picks because you have this excellent FAAB process?
I think that's something that I'm trying to get better at this year. I think there's a lot of people who are really strategic about that. So a lot of times, like later on in drafts, what I'll do is I'll target some guys. Like if there's a committee, maybe I'll target the guy who people don't think is going to get it, just in case he does, to make sure that I do have those FAAB spots open so that I can churn them. Or else what I'll do is look at the upcoming schedule and I'll go after a pitcher who maybe like there's a guy who's going up against like the Tigers and the Orioles in the next 2 weeks. And so in the first 2 weeks of the season, so I'll go and I'll draft that guy, even though he may not be, even though he's maybe suspect. I always want a good reason to draft a guy. But yeah, I definitely will go after those kind of higher upside guys, knowing that I'm going to need to churn a little bit to be effective.
Man, I couldn't agree more with that. Max Freeze had a fantastic article, which I feel so bad for him.
He did.
now it doesn't matter, but hopefully we can get some sort of update on it. Maybe the schedules are close to what they were. But yeah, you had fantastic fringe pitchers where the first 2 weeks we're like, oh, hey, they're playing bad teams. We should know this because we want that out of the gate. So that's the kind of stuff I can't emphasize enough. I love that answer. A fantastic answer. It looks like Co-MacDo, who I assume is Cody McDonald.
Co-MacDo, Cody.
Asks, if you had to give up all ice cream except one flavor of product, what are you keeping?
Ooh, all ice cream except for one flavor product. How do you know I like ice cream so much, Cody? I maybe because I mentioned I've been to like 3 establishments since the quarantine started, like 3 food establishments, and it's the same ice cream place 3 times. So I would choose mint chocolate chip.
Okay.
No, I take that back. Mint chocolate cookie. Mint chocolate cookie would be my go-to.
So like
mint chocolate cookie,
right? Isn't that what that is?
What's that?
Grasshopper, I believe, is when they have Oreo inside of mint chocolate chip.
It could be. Okay. It's got a lot of different names I've seen it as. Sometimes I've seen Grasshopper as like the Grasshopper cookies are like for Keebler are like the little like chocolate covered mint ones.
Oh, that would make a lot of sense. Yeah.
Like the Girl Scout cookies, like Thin Mint style cookies.
Yeah, you don't like Thin Mints, right? Is that what I saw?
They're not my favorite of them. I like them. I put them in the freezer. I think they're better in the freezer.
Yeah,
I like Samoas and
okay.
Yeah, or Caramel Delights, actually.
Of course. I don't do coconut, so I don't understand. I just do not understand why people like coconut, but that's
a cool texture thing.
Yes, completely.
Okay. I can understand the texture thing.
I don't understand. Anyway, how long does FAAB take you using this method, by the way?
Depends on how many leagues you have.
Sure.
It's actually the process of identifying the various players actually doesn't take that long, because essentially what you're doing is you go into FanGraphs, you create that custom dashboard, then you search by each one of those metrics. So you essentially like search for 4 of them, and you just look for players. And most of the players are already taken because they're good players. And then you identify the guys that aren't, and then you see how they do across the board and which guys you might be interested in to do a little deeper dive. Then you do the deeper dive, and then you just got to go to your league, see who's available, prioritize them based on the need that your team has. So it's less the process that's time intensive, I think, as it is figuring out what fits your best team. I had 10 FAAB leagues last year, so I spend like 4 to 6 hours, I'd say.
Yeah, that's your Sunday.
Yeah, that's my Saturday night from like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Unreal. So Shelly Versary has a question. How often do you incorporate video into your research?
Never.
It's okay. That's an appropriate answer.
No, well, and the one thing for me is like one of the things that's that I try to do, I think there are people who are really good at using video, and that's just not something I know. I just don't know that. I don't know about mechanical changes. I don't know about, like, you can see very clear shifts in like batting stance and stuff like that, but I don't know enough about the mechanics of baseball to be able to integrate that well. So I think that would be an area of improvement for me, would be able to integrate that video in addition to the analytical piece.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, honestly, you have a very clear strength here, and it makes so much sense. Like, use your strength as much as you can. I am terrible at hitters. Like, oh my God. So I completely understand this.
Hence pitcher list.
Yeah, there it is, right? Oh man, it just goes to show how many people I've needed to surround myself with in order to do the things that we do. So huge props to all of them. Pull Hitter 43 has another question. This will probably be our last one. How much % of your FAAB do you recommend having for the final 2 weeks in NFBC leagues? A tough question.
I think it depends. I mean, what I would do is really like pay attention to how much FAAB other people in your league have, because one of the things that you'll be able to notice is like, okay, how many guys in my league are still active?
Sure.
Or how many have switched over to football. So look at your league, figure that out, figure out who you're in competition with,
right? And
what FAAB they've got. Generally speaking, I mean, I like to have a lot, right? I think last year I had at least $75 heading into the last month of the season, something like that. In some of them, I had like 150, 200. It really just depended, but I definitely, and I think there's some research to back this up. Like, there's always your Yordan Alvarez's, but the most effective FAAB usage is generally like the medium priced guys. So I like to save FAAB. And the biggest mistake I made last year was spending like $200 on Cole Tucker early on in the season.
Sure.
I actually didn't implement my process because I was on an airplane to Atlanta and I had to expedite things, and
well, it just showcases how good your process is, right? How much you need it. So that's fantastic. Toby, this has been an amazing presentation. Really, thank you so much for being part of PitchCon, and we all had a great time.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Nick. I really appreciate it. Thanks to everything you guys are doing. It's phenomenal.
It's awesome to have you here. Really, thanks again. I'll see you soon.
Yep. Bye.
So, all right.